Hello, travelers. Professor GreyTail here. I know that you have already learned much about our magical world, where good and evil intertwine their wands in an eternal dance. But I am certain I can still surprise you. Moonlight drifted softly over the quiet streets of post-war London, where the wizarding world still carried the faint scars of battles fought and victories painfully won. Within the Ministry of Magic, long after most workers had gone home, Hermione Granger moved swiftly through the dim corridors. Her cloak whispered against the polished floor, and in her hand she clutched a folder marked with the crimson seal of high priority. She had spent weeks tracing strange magical disturbances, faint but unmistakable ripples, as though an old power were stirring in its sleep. Tonight, she had found something she could no longer ignore. In the dimly lit records chamber, she spread documents across a table, sightings of wand explosions in Eastern Europe, reports of duelers whose spells were amplified beyond natural strength, and one chilling note from an auror stationed in the Alps. It felt like the wand wanted to be obeyed. Hermione swallowed hard. She had hoped never to see anything like this again. Years ago, Harry had returned the Elder Wand to rest, ensuring its power would fade with time. Yet the evidence before her whispered another truth. Someone was trying to wake it. A soft crack echoed behind her. Hermione turned, wand raised, only to see a young cursebreaker she had summoned earlier that evening. Calder Thane, sandy-haired and travel-worn, stepped forward with a nervous bow. "I found what you asked me to look for," he said, lifting a weather-stained satchel. "But I don't understand how it's connected. It's just a vault, sealed since the days of Grindelwald." Hermione gestured for him to continue. Calder pulled out a fragment of carved stone, etched with runes that glimmered faintly even in the low light. "I broke the outer wards easily enough, but the inner one, it reacted to me." He hesitated, as though the memory chilled him. "It whispered a name, one I'd never heard before. Something about a master, a third one." Hermione's breath caught. She had read every surviving record on the Elder Wand's lineage. Its masters were well documented, or so she had believed. "What exactly did it say?" she asked. Calder repeated the phrase with care. "The third master left his claim in stone. Disturb it, and the legacy awakens." The room felt suddenly colder. Hermione gathered the documents and tucked them beneath her arm. "We need help," she said quietly. "Someone who understands the wand better than anyone alive." And though she had hoped she would never again need to involve him in such matters, there was only one choice. Hours later, the sun had not yet risen when Hermione stood at the familiar door of a small cottage, nestled at the edge of a peaceful village. She knocked once, then twice more. Footsteps approached, and the door opened to reveal Harry, hair still tousled from sleep, spectacles askew. Yet the moment he saw Hermione's expression, he straightened. "What's happened?" he asked. Inside, over a quickly conjured pot of tea, Hermione explained everything: the disturbances, the stone fragment, the whisper of an unknown master. Harry listened without interruption, fingers curling unconsciously as though recalling the wand he no longer held. "I thought returning it to Dumbledore's tomb would end it," he murmured. "I thought that was the end of everything." "So did I," Hermione said. "But if someone is trying to restore the wand's full power, if this third master left something behind, we need to act, before whoever is searching for it succeeds. Harry stood, resolve settling over him like an old cloak he had hoped never to wear again. "Tell me where to start." Hermione opened the folder, revealing a map marked with a single glowing point deep in the mountains. "The vault Calder opened is only the first piece," she said. "Something is moving out there, Harry. Something ancient. And whoever seeks it is growing bolder." Harry's expression hardened, the determined look she remembered from darker days. "Then we go before they do." But neither of them yet understood that the true danger was not the vault, nor the runes, nor even the lingering whisper of the Elder Wand. For far away, in a hidden corner of the world, a new faction was already on the move, guided by a leader who believed the Third Master's time had finally come. And the first thread of their plan was already woven around Calder Thane in ways none of them yet sensed. The wind howled through the narrow mountain pass as Harry, Hermione, and Calder ascended the stony path toward the abandoned stronghold that once belonged to Grindelwald's scattered followers. Snow clung to the cliffs like ancient frostbitten sentinels, and the air carried a strange hum, as though the mountain itself recalled old magic and dared the intruders to draw nearer. Calder moved with quiet unease. Ever since he had touched the carved stone, something had settled within him. An echo not quite heard, a pressure not quite felt. He kept his wand close and his steps measured, though he said nothing of the whisper that had followed him in his dreams since that night. Claim what was never finished. Hermione pushed forward with determined strides, her breath forming small clouds in the cold. Harry followed at her side, taking in every shadow, every shifting gust, the instincts of war still quick beneath his calm exterior. Though peace had shaped his life in recent years, the memory of darker days had never entirely faded. At last, they reached the gates of the stronghold, iron bars torn long ago from their hinges. The courtyard beyond lay buried under drifts of snow, the walls cracked and darkened by time. Yet the silence felt wrong, as though the stronghold held its breath, waiting. "We should be quick," Hermione said. The record suggested this vault was sealed during Grindelwald's final retreat. Whatever rests inside has remained undisturbed for decades. "Not entirely undisturbed," Calder murmured. His hand brushed the satchel carrying the runic fragment. "When I first touched it, something awakened, as though the magic recognized me." Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione. "Perhaps it responded to your skill as a curse breaker," he offered. But even he did not sound convinced. They stepped inside. The corridor sloped into the earth, lit only by the faint blue sheen of lingering enchantments. Dust hung in the air like old whispers. Their footsteps echoed softly as Hermione cast a revealing charm. Runes flared to life along the walls, some broken, others thrumming faintly, as though half asleep. "The defenses were deactivated recently," Hermione said. "Not all of them, but enough." Harry's jaw tightened. Someone has already been here. They hurried deeper until the corridor opened into a vast chamber. At its center stood a stone pedestal, carved with the same runes as Calder's fragment. The pedestal was cracked open, as if by a great force. Empty. Calder stepped forward slowly, almost drawn in by an unseen pull. "This is where I found the fragment," he whispered. "But it wasn't alone. There were more pieces, and they're gone." Before Hermione could respond, a sudden blast of cold light erupted from the pedestal. Calder staggered back as a shimmering figure rose from the fractured stone, a memory echo woven from ancient magic. The figure resolved into the shape of a hooded wizard, his voice echoing through the chamber. "To the seeker who disturbs my charge," the apparition said, "know that the Elder Wand obeyed not 2 masters, but 3. My claim was brief, but my enchantment endures. Only the rightful heir to my legacy may unlock the wand's full power once more." Hermione's eyes widened as she scribbled frantic notes. A temporary master, someone history forgot. The apparition continued, its gaze turning directly toward Calder, though it could not truly see him. "The pieces you gather will call the power that once passed through my hand. Seek them with courage, or fall to the ambition of those who hunt them." The chamber quivered, the image flickering. "Beware the circle of ash," it warned, "for they believe themselves worthy, but the wand itself will choose." The apparition vanished, leaving the chamber cold once more. Calder sank onto a stone ledge, pale and shaken. Circle of Ash. I've heard that name. Rumors among curse breakers, a group obsessed with ancient magic. Dangerous. Hermione's pulse quickened. They must have taken the missing fragments. If they complete whatever enchantment this third master left behind, they might restore the Elder Wand, Harry finished grimly. Or worse, unleash magic that even the wand never wielded. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber, as though the mountain objected to their presence. But it was not the earth. The rumble grew louder, sharper. Footsteps. Multiple figures were approaching from the passage behind them. Harry raised his wand. "We're not alone." Shadows flickered across the walls as hooded shapes entered the chamber. Their cloaks were dark, edged in ash-gray embroidery. Their wands glowed with a harsh red light. "The Circle of Ash," Hermione breathed. One of the intruders stepped forward, lowering his hood to reveal a thin, sharp-featured wizard with pale eyes that glittered with cold purpose. "Thank you for opening the vault for us," he said softly. "We've been tracking the fragments for months, and now, at last, we know the identity of the chosen conduit." His gaze locked on Calder. Harry stepped protectively between them. "He's not going anywhere." "Oh, but he is," the leader replied. "The third master's enchantment has already begun to bind itself to him, whether he wills it or not." Calder's breath hitched. "What does that mean?" "It means," the wizard said, raising his wand, "that you belong to us now." The chamber erupted in light and spellfire, and the battle for the third master's legacy began. Spells clashed in eruptions of light that split the shadows like thunderbolts. The chamber shuddered under the force of the duel, ancient dust swirling in frantic spirals as though the mountain itself recoiled from renewed conflict. Harry moved first, swift and sure, sending a shield charm that flared like a rising wall of silver. The leader of the circle countered with a blast so fierce the floor cracked beneath it. Hermione struck next, her wand cutting the air with precise arcs. She conjured a wave of brilliant sparks meant to disorient the attackers, buying them precious moments. Calder backed toward the pedestal, uncertain yet resolute, raising defensive spells he had learned during his dangerous work abroad. His magic, though less rehearsed for battle, carried a raw intensity that surprised even him. But the Circle of Ash advanced with practiced unity. 3 witches closed in from the left, their coordinated spells weaving a net of glowing runes that crawled across the chamber floor. Harry recognized the movement instantly. "Hermione, break their formation." She nodded, sweeping her wand downward. A gust of force burst from the ground, disrupting the runic pattern before it could solidify. The witches staggered, their spell collapsing in a hiss of frustrated magic. Yet the circle leader stood unharmed, watching with an expression not of fury, but calculation. He seemed to be measuring them, waiting for something not yet revealed. Calder felt a chill race through him. A tremor ran along his fingers, the same unsettling pull he had sensed ever since touching the stone fragment. The sensation deepened now, spreading like a slow-burning ember. His pulse quickened. "Harry!" he called over the clash of spells. "Something's happening inside the pedestal." Indeed, cracks of shimmering light had begun to spread across the broken stone. The runes that once slept now flared to life in a twisting circle of pale fire. Hermione cast a revealing charm and gasped softly. "The pedestal was a conduit," she breathed. "It reacts to the fragments. When Calder came close..." "It recognized him," Harry said. The circle leader smiled faintly. "At last you begin to understand." Raising his wand, he spoke a word none of them recognized. The chamber responded with a violent pulse. The circle surged forward, their power doubling in an instant. Harry barely blocked the incoming spell that would have struck Calder squarely in the chest. But the enemy did not relent. A witch hurled a bolt of flame that tore across the chamber, forcing them to scatter. Hermione conjured a barrier that shimmered like a curved shield of moonlit glass. Heat roared against it, cracking the air. "Fall back," Hermione cried. "We can't win a prolonged duel inside their territory." Harry nodded, but retreating proved no simple task. The circle swung around them, cutting off the corridor that led deeper into the stronghold. Their leader raised his wand again, and the stone behind him peeled open, forming an archway of darkened magic. "You need not flee," he said calmly. "We seek only what belongs to us. Your curse breaker." "You're not having him," Harry replied, voice low and steady. The leader's pale eyes glinted. "That is not for you to decide." Without warning, he unleashed a spell unlike any Harry had seen, a spiraling bolt that moved like a living thing, serpentine and relentless. Harry dodged, but the spell curved midair, striking the ground near Calder with a thunderous crack. Calder was thrown backward, colliding with the pedestal. The instant he touched it, the runes blazed. A shockwave blasted outward, knocking every wizard, friend and foe alike, to their knees. Light flooded the chamber, rising from the pedestal in swirling tendrils that wrapped around Calder's arms like pale, seeking roots. Hermione scrambled upright, terror and awe warring in her eyes. "It's choosing him, binding him to the enchantment." Calder struggled, but the light held him fast, threads crawling along his skin like glowing veins. The echoing whisper returned, louder now, clearer. "Claim what was left undone." He clenched his teeth, fighting the pull. "I don't want this." The circle leader staggered to his feet, panting but triumphant. "It doesn't matter what you want. The Third Master's legacy accepts no refusal." With a vicious slash of his wand, he attempted to seize control of the enchantment, but the pedestal rejected him. Flaring so fiercely, he cried out and stumbled back. "It will not obey you," Harry said, rising to stand between the leader and Calder. "You can't force a mastery that was never yours." "Oh, but I can guide it," the leader replied, recovering quickly. "The enchantment awakens only once in an age, and when it completes itself, the Elder Wand's true power will return to the one who carries the Third Master's mantle." His gaze drifted again to Calder. Hermione moved to Harry's side. "We need to break the connection," she whispered urgently. "If the enchantment completes, Calder may lose control entirely, or worse." Harry nodded. "We disrupt the runes, force the magic to collapse. But carefully." Hermione raised her wand. If the backlash hits Calder? Before she finished her warning, the circle attacked again, knowing their moment was slipping. Spells rained down, shaking the chamber with renewed fury. Harry and Hermione countered as best they could, but the circle pressed with desperate ferocity. Calder, trapped against the pedestal, struggled against the binding light, his wand clutched in a trembling hand. The leader shouted another command, sending 2 of his followers rushing forward. Their wands formed a lattice of darkened energy aimed directly at Calder. Harry broke through their line, sprinting with all the speed he possessed. He cast a shield charm just in time, deflecting the twin spells in a burst of fractured light. But the momentary victory cost him his footing. A third spell struck him in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Hermione cried out his name, but the circle leader seized the opening. He pointed his wand at the pedestal. The runes flickered under his influence. For a heartbeat, it seemed he might wrest control. Then a deep, resonant crack split the air. The pedestal erupted in a storm of white fire. Calder's scream was swallowed by the explosion of light. Harry shielded his eyes. Hermione staggered back. The circle fell into chaos, and when the brilliance faded, Calder was no longer bound to the pedestal. He was standing, though barely, surrounded by a halo of faint, drifting sparks. The circle leader stared, stunned. Impossible. You weren't meant to withstand that. Calder lifted his gaze, weary yet resolute. I am not your conduit, he said, voice trembling but firm. Nor will I ever be. The sparks around him dimmed, but the air still hummed with lingering magic. Harry rose beside him. We're leaving. The circle of ash regrouped, but too slowly. Hermione conjured a blast that shattered the weakened stone near the chamber's side. Rock tumbled down, blocking the path between the circle and their prey. Go, she urged. Harry guided Calder into the dim corridor. The mountain groaned as more stones cracked overhead, dust spilling like falling sand. Hermione followed, glancing back only once to see the circle leader standing amid the chaos. His expression sharpened with a new, unsettling certainty. He had seen enough to know one thing. The third master's enchantment lived, and Calder Thane was the key to unlocking it, and he would not rest until he claimed him. Far above, the storm winds howled, as though warning that the true danger had only just awoken. The mountain trembled as the 3 fled through the collapsing corridor, its ancient stones groaning beneath the upheaval of unleashed magic. Dust fell in soft curtains that blurred their vision, and cracks leapt across the walls like jagged lightning. Harry led the way, wand alight, guiding them through the winding passage as though every instinct urged him forward with renewed urgency. Hermione supported Calder, whose steps faltered beneath the lingering shock of the enchantment's violent release. Nearly there, Harry called over the thunder of falling rock. The exit is close. They rounded a sharp bend just as a boulder crashed behind them, sealing the path and cutting off the shouts of the circle of ash. For a breathless instant, silence pressed in, broken only by the rasp of their breathing. Hermione tightened her grip around Calder's arm, steadying him. "Can you walk?" she asked. "I think so," Calder replied, though his voice trembled. His hands still crackled faintly with residual sparks, like embers that refused to die. He stared at them with dread. The magic. It hasn't gone. It feels as though it's inside me now. "We'll figure it out," Hermione said firmly. "Just stay with us." They reached the final stretch of the corridor, where daylight glimmered weakly through the rough-hewn archway ahead. Harry stepped into the open air first, wand raised to scan the landscape. Snow stung his face as the wind swept down from the heights, carrying flecks that glittered like shards of silver. The rugged valley below lay quiet, the storm clouds thinning at last. But danger had not vanished with the circle's pursuit. It clung to Calder in every tremor of his breath. The three began their descent, half sliding, half climbing down the icy slope. Hermione conjured rope-like lines of light to secure their footing, weaving a path between jagged rocks. Harry moved close behind Calder, ready to catch him should the mountain's treacherous footing betray him. When at last they reached a narrow ledge overlooking the valley, Calder collapsed onto a flat stone. He rubbed his temples, closing his eyes. It was like a voice, he whispered, when the pedestal exploded, like something old and unfinished. It didn't want the circle to take control. It didn't want me to be harmed, but it also didn't let me go. Harry crouched beside him. What did it say? Exactly, Calder. What words did you hear? Calder shook his head. Not words. More like intent, pressure, as if the enchantment recognized something in me. I'm not claiming anything. Truly, I don't want it. But I think it wants something from me. Hermione exchanged a troubled glance with Harry. If the third master crafted the enchantment to choose an heir, it might be following rules we don't yet understand. Harry's gaze drifted to the distant mountains, his thoughts clouded. We need answers, real ones, not legends, not fragments. And we need them before the circle regroups, Hermione added. They won't abandon their pursuit now. Calder looked up, his expression stricken. Then perhaps I should leave you both. I'm putting you in danger. You're not leaving, Harry said, without hesitation. If the circle gets hold of you, they'll use the enchantment to carry out whatever plan they've begun. And we won't allow that. Hermione nodded. You're safer with us, and we need to understand why the enchantment chose you. A long silence followed, broken only by the whisper of wind across the snow. Calder lowered his gaze, accepting their resolve. Harry rose. We head to the nearest apparition point. Once we're clear of the mountain's wards, we return to England. Hermione, any idea where we begin once we're home? Yes, she said. In the archives of our oldest magical families. The Elder Wand's lineage has been studied for centuries. If there was a forgotten master, someone who held the wand briefly during the upheaval of Grindelwald's rise, there must be some record of him, hidden in documents few have touched since. Calder exhaled a shaky breath. If this third master went to such lengths to hide his enchantment, why leave behind any clues at all? Harry added. And because he feared 100 Twain. Harry added, and because he feared someone like the Circle of Ash would try to claim his power. They resumed their descent, cautious and swift. As they moved, Calder's steps grew steadier, though he periodically winced when sparks flickered along his fingertips. He tried to conceal them, but Harry caught each flash with quiet concern. The path eventually led them to a sheltered clearing where the mountain's magical interference weakened. Hermione tested the air with a soft spell. This should be far enough. We can apparate from here. Harry nodded and prepared to take Calder's arm. But just as they joined hands, a faint crackling hum rose from the ground beneath them. Hermione's eyes widened. Something's coming. Move! A burst of icy magic erupted beside them, searing the snow with a spiral of blackened frost. Harry jerked Calder out of its path. More blasts followed, falling like arrows from above. Shadows circled on the ridgeline, hooded figures moving swiftly against the storm-dark sky. "The circle," Harry growled. "They're already regrouped." Hermione cast a sweeping shield charm. "They must have a second detachment stationed nearby." "No time for a fight," Harry said. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, go." They twisted into the pool of apparition, just as another bolt struck the ledge where they had stood. The mountain shuddered, sending a wave of shattered stone cascading down the slope. Harry felt the world contract around him, the roar of magic surging in his ears, and then they landed upon the familiar cobbled street outside a quiet, unremarkable cottage in the countryside. The sudden stillness was jarring after the chaos of the mountains. Hermione steadied herself. "We're safe, for now." Calder sank onto the nearest bench, shaking. "They followed us into the mountains. What's to stop them from coming here?" "They don't know where we went," Harry replied, "and they won't find us easily. This place is protected by powerful wards." Hermione opened her bag and withdrew the runic fragment, setting it gently on the bench beside Calder. "This is the key to understanding why the enchantment reacts to you. We must decode every symbol, every trace of ancient magic. Somewhere within this fragment lies the identity of the third master." Harry looked from Hermione to Calder, then toward the darkening sky. "And once we know who he was, we'll understand what he intended, and how to stop the circle from completing his unfinished legacy." Yet even as he spoke, a faint shimmer of light pulsed from the fragment, answering the sparks still flickering beneath Calder's skin. The enchantment was not dormant. It was awakening. Night gathered over the countryside like a great velvet cloak, whispering against the eaves of the cottage where Harry, Hermione, and Calder sought refuge. Inside, the hearth glowed with a gentle fire, casting shifting patterns across shelves filled with books and artifacts from Harry's quieter years. Yet warmth alone could not dispel the unease that lingered in the room. Calder sat at the wooden table, trembling hands laid flat beside the runic fragment. The sparks along his skin had dimmed to faint embers, but the hum of the enchantment still pulsed beneath his fingertips. Hermione stood over him, quill in hand, parchment unfurled as she documented every discovery with meticulous care. Harry paced near the window, scanning the dark lawn beyond the wards. Though no intruders stirred in the shadows, his instincts refused to rest. "We need to work quickly," Hermione began, her voice steady despite the fatigue that lined her face. "The Circle of Ash is bold, organized, and evidently well prepared. If they've already traced the fragments this far, they will not abandon the hunt now." Calder drew a breath and tried to calm the tremor in his hands. "I don't understand why the enchantment binds to me. There's nothing special about my bloodline. No ancient ancestry, no wand lore connection. I'm simply a curse breaker who stumbled upon a hidden vault." Hermione tapped the runic fragment thoughtfully. "Ancient enchantments don't always follow lineage or logic. Sometimes they search for qualities: courage, instinct, skill, or even an unwitting thread of fate. The third master might have woven his spell to respond to something deeper than blood." Harry stopped pacing. "Whatever the enchantment sees in you, Calder, the Circle thinks it makes you essential to their plans. That is reason enough for us to stay ahead of them." He approached the table and pointed at the glowing lines etched into the fragment. "Hermione, what have you decoded so far?" "3 sigils of preservation," she replied, tracing the delicate carvings. 2 symbols of transfer, likely indicating that the enchantment passes from object to person. But these here..." She paused, brow furrowing. "I've never seen runes quite like these." Calder leaned forward. What do they represent? I think they're a kind of name, Hermione murmured. Or a signature, a wizard marking his creation. But it's not written in any familiar script. Harry studied the sigils. Could it be the third master's true identity? Not directly, she answered. But if we can decipher these unfamiliar marks, we may learn where he came from and why history erased him. Silence settled as they pondered the mystery. The fire crackled softly, the only sound in the dim room. Then, without warning, the runic fragment flickered. Calder flinched as a faint glow surged through the carvings, dancing like a ripple of moonlight across water. Hermione stepped back in surprise. Harry drew his wand. What's happening? Calder pressed a hand to his forehead. It feels like a pull again, not as strong as before, but present. Before any of them could react, a soft sound echoed from the fragment, like the sigh of distant wind. Light pooled around the sigils, and slowly, deliberately, the carvings rearranged themselves. The runes shifted into alignment, forming a single symbol that gleamed with quiet power. Hermione gasped. It's a map! Indeed, the runes condensed into a simplified outline, a river bending around a forest, a cliffside marked with 3 ridges, and a solitary tower etched at the southern border. Harry's voice grew low. I know that place. Hermione turned quickly. Where? Northumberland, he said. An abandoned fortress once used during the war against Grindelwald. It served as a passageway for wizards fleeing the conflict. Dumbledore mentioned it once, an outpost where magic lingered strangely. Few ever returned after exploring it. Hermione's quill flew across the parchment. If the third master left an enchantment in the mountains, he might have hidden something there as well. A record of his time with the Elder Wand, perhaps, or a clue to the enchantment's purpose. Calder swallowed hard. And the Circle of Ash, they could be heading there now. Harry nodded. Which means we cannot delay. Hermione gathered the parchment, her expression sharpening with resolve. We depart at dawn. The wards here will protect us until then. But tomorrow, we go to Northumberland. Calder stared at the glowing fragment, anxiety creeping along his spine. What if the enchantment intensifies again? What if I lose control? Harry rested a hand on his shoulder. You won't be facing this alone. Whatever lies ahead, we meet it together. Calder managed a faint nod, but the night was far from over. As Hermione extinguished the lamps, leaving only the soft firelight, Harry returned to the window. The sky stretched dark and wide across the countryside. No figures moved in its depths. No shadow whispered along the hedge. Yet something felt wrong. A faint tremor stirred beneath the wards. A ripple, subtle and fleeting, like a fingertip brushing the edges of a barrier. Harry stiffened. Hermione, he whispered, did you feel that? She raised her wand at once, murmuring a diagnostic charm. Golden strands swept across the room, drifted through the walls, and expanded into the yard. The air shimmered. There, Hermione breathed. Someone probed the wards. Calder stood, panic tightening his voice. The circle. No, Hermione said slowly. Their magic is precise and sharp. This is different, older, wilder. Harry's hand tightened around his wand. Then who is it? Before Hermione could answer, the runic fragment flared once more. A single spark leapt from its surface, striking the air above it. The spark expanded into a faint, wavering silhouette. A shadow of a man cloaked in indistinct gray. A memory, an echo. The figure's voice drifted like distant thunder. To the one who bears my binding, the path narrows. Seek the tower where the river bends. There you shall find the truth of my claim, or the chains of your fate." The silhouette flickered, turning as though gazing upon Calder. "Beware the circle, but beware too the hand that once sought my power and now stirs again." The echo dissolved into mist. Harry stared in stunned silence. Another warning, and another enemy. Hermione's breath trembled. Someone else knew the third master, someone powerful enough to sense his enchantments even now. Calder whispered the thought none dared speak aloud. Is the third master truly gone, or is his shadow still walking the world? The fire crackled softly in answer. And beyond the safety of the wards, unseen eyes turned toward the cottage, watching, waiting, as the night deepened into silence. Dawn crept slowly over the countryside, its pale gold rays brushing the frost-tipped fields surrounding the cottage. Yet within the quiet refuge, sleep had not visited any of the three travelers. The shadowy echo of the third master lingered in their thoughts like a cold breath drifting through the rafters. When first light touched the windows, Harry rose from his chair and prepared for the journey ahead. Hermione spread fresh parchment across the table, copying the map that had revealed itself upon the runic fragment. "The fortress lies deep within the wilds of Northumberland," she said, voice steady though her hands carried the faintest tremor. "Old magical structures are woven through the cliffs there. We must be wary." Calder paced near the fire. The sparks beneath his skin flickered faintly, but had not vanished, and at times his fingers tingled with a strange cold. "If the enchantment grows stronger," he murmured, "what if it draws the circle to us, or someone else entirely?" "Then we stand ready," Harry answered, buckling his cloak and tucking his wand into its place. "Whatever watches from the shadows cannot strike before we reach the fortress and find the truth hidden there." Hermione extinguished the hearth and stepped beside them. "We should leave now. The longer we delay, the more ground the circle gains." They moved into the crisp morning, where grass glittered beneath frost, and the air smelled of winter's breath. The wards shimmered faintly as they stepped beyond them, dissolving into the light. With a shared nod, they grasped each other's arms. Harry led the apparition. A crack split the stillness. Then the cold winds of the northern wilds swept around them. They arrived upon a lonely cliff overlooking a bending river that flowed silver in the early sun. Pines swayed in the chill breeze, their branches casting long shadows over frozen earth. And there, nestled against the cliffside, rose the ancient fortress. Its towers were broken and darkened with age, yet the stones thrummed faintly with old spells, as though they remembered every footfall that had once passed through their halls. Hermione exhaled slowly. "It is exactly as the map showed." Calder stared, his pulse quickening with a strange sense of foreboding. "It feels alive." Harry stepped forward, his gaze sharpening. "Old places often are." They descended the slope in silence. With every step, a chill deepened in the air. No ordinary cold, but a subtle force woven into the land itself. Calder felt it tug at the sparks beneath his skin, like a whisper urging him closer. He clenched his fists, struggling to ignore it. When they reached the fortress gates, Hermione cast a detection charm. Pale wisps of light drifted across the stones, settling on cracks where faint runes had nearly faded from existence. "These wards were ancient even in Grindelwald's time," she said. "But there's something else here, something layered atop them." "Another enchantment?" Harry asked. "Yes, and recent." Calder's breath caught. "The circle? Possibly, or someone who reached this place before them." Harry touched the heavy wooden gate. It creaked open with a groan that echoed through the courtyard. Inside, debris lay scattered among fallen stones, and frost clung to the remnants of towers long collapsed. Yet, beneath the decay, the fortress breathed with quiet vigilance, as though awaiting the return of those who once guarded its secrets. "Stay close," Harry murmured. They passed under a crumbling archway into the main hall. Light filtered through gaps in the roof, illuminating a long, narrow chamber lined with pillars carved from dark granite. The air held the scent of old spells and the faint metallic whisper of dormant runes. Hermione approached one of the pillars. "These markings, they're the same style as the runes on the fragment." Harry frowned. Then the third master's magic touched this place as well. Calder ran a hand along the nearest pillar. The sparks beneath his skin pulsed in answer. A soft glow emanated from the stone, reacting to him. Hermione stepped back sharply. "Calder, stop!" But the glow had already awakened. A deep hum resonated through the hall, and runes ignited across the chamber, weaving patterns of pale light. At the far end of the room, a doorway long hidden slid open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. Harry raised his wand. "The fortress recognizes him." Hermione swallowed. "Because he is bound to the enchantment." Calder stepped away from the pillar, breath unsteady. "I didn't mean to activate anything." Harry placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You didn't choose this, Calder. But now that the fortress answers you, we must follow where it leads." They moved toward the staircase, wary but resolute. As they descended, the air grew colder still, and the hum of magic deepened into a slow, rhythmic pulse, as though the fortress possessed a beating heart. At the bottom lay a circular chamber carved into the bedrock. Torches flared to life as they entered, though none of them had cast a spell. In the center of the room stood a stone dais upon which rested a fractured wooden staff, the remnant of a wand long destroyed. Hermione whispered, "Could this be?" "No," Harry said softly. "The Elder Wand is whole, resting where I left it. This is something else." Carved into the dais were lines of ancient script, swirling around the broken relic. Hermione knelt to examine them, her eyes widening. "This speaks of the third master," she said. "He held the Elder Wand for one night only, during the fall of a forgotten stronghold. He crafted an enchantment upon it, a safeguard, fearing the wand's power even as it passed out of his grasp." Calder approached hesitantly. The sparks within him flared brighter. Hermione continued, "He foresaw that the wand would one day be broken, and its pieces sought by those hungry for power. So he left markers, keys, to be discovered by one who bore no ambition for the wand, but who possessed the skill to understand its dangers." Harry's gaze shifted to Calder. "A curse breaker." Calder shook his head. "But why me? There are hundreds in my field, many far more skilled." Before Hermione could answer, the chamber's torches flickered violently. A cold voice drifted from the darkness behind them. "Because fate chose you." Harry spun, wand raised. From the shadows stepped a tall figure cloaked in black, his face half obscured by a hood, but his presence radiated power that chilled the very air. Calder whispered, "Who are you?" The figure lowered his hood. White hair gleamed like frost. His eyes burned with iron resolve, and a familiarity Harry could not place. "I," the stranger said, "am the last apprentice of the third master." Hermione stiffened. "Impossible. He lived over a century ago." "Yes," the man replied, stepping closer, "and he left behind more than enchantments, Harry positioned himself before Calder. "What do you want?" The man's gaze fixed upon Calder, unblinking. "The same as the circle of ash," he said softly. "But unlike them, I do not seek the Elder Wand's power for myself." A tense silence filled the chamber. "I seek the rightful completion of the enchantment," the stranger declared, "and the one chosen to finish it stands before me." Calder's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Harry steadied his wand. "You'll not take him." The stranger smiled faintly. "I do not need to." At that moment, the runes carved into the dais ignited with blinding light, and Calder felt the enchantment seize him once more. Light burst through the chamber like a shattering star. Calder staggered as the enchantment surged through him, hotter and stronger than before. The runes on the dais burned with fierce brilliance, casting long, trembling shadows across the stone walls. Harry seized Calder's arm to pull him away, but the magic tightened around him like invisible chains, rooting him to the very ground. "Calder!" Hermione cried. "Fight it! Focus on anything familiar." Calder clenched his teeth, trying to steady his breath, yet the force pouring through him felt ancient, monumental, as though centuries of lost power had awoken at once. The runic symbols on his skin sparked violently, flickering with pale fire. The cloaked stranger, the apprentice of the third master, watched with unnerving calm, his white hair stirring in the sudden gale of magic. "Do not resist," he said softly. "The enchantment will not harm you. It recognizes you." Harry rounded on him, wand raised. "You said you didn't want to take him, but you're letting this happen." "I am not letting it happen," the stranger replied. "It is the will of the enchantment itself. You cannot stop a spell cast by a master who wielded the Elder Wand, even for a single night." Hermione stepped between them, eyes blazing. "There must be a way to break the connection before it overwhelms him. Tell us how." The stranger's gaze remained steady. "To break it would mean to destroy the enchantment entirely, and if you do that, the circle of ash will seize the fragments and pursue their own path. You undo the only safeguard the third master ever left behind." Harry shook his head. There must be another way, a way to protect Calder without destroying what remains. The apprentice's expression shifted, somber, as though recalling a memory heavy with loss. "Protection comes with truth. If you wish to guide him through the binding, then you must understand the third master himself, and I am the last living wizard who remembers him." Hermione's breath caught. "You're more than 100 years old. That is impossible without—" "A life preserved by art beyond common magic," the man interrupted. "The third master feared what the wand could become. In his final years, he wove spells to extend the lives of those sworn to protect his legacy, that they might watch the world for signs of rising ambition." His gaze drifted to Calder. "You are the first sign in generations." The chamber's magic roared. Cracks split across the dais as Calder's knees buckled. Harry caught him, but the enchantment clung to Calder like a storm to its lightning. Hermione hurried to the carved script. "These runes describe an awakening, a sequence. If Calder completes the enchantment, he becomes its bearer. But if someone forces it, the enchantment will destroy the unworthy." The stranger finished. "It is why the circle's efforts will fail. They cannot bend what was not shaped for them." Calder gasped through clenched teeth. "I do not want this." "I know," the stranger said gently. "That is why you were chosen." The magic flared again. Then, as suddenly as it erupted, it began to wane. The runes dimmed, the light receding like a tide. Calder collapsed, the sparks around him fading to faint embers. Harry and Hermione rushed to his side. "Easy," Harry murmured. You're safe now." Calder shook his head weakly. "It's not gone, only waiting." The apprentice approached, keeping a respectful distance. "The binding will continue to surface as long as the enchantment senses danger. Once the third master's design is fulfilled, the binding will settle." Hermione rose to face him. "Then tell us what the third master intended. No riddles, no cryptic warnings. We need the truth." The stranger studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "His name," he said quietly, "was Aaron Morkant, a wandmaker's son who fought during the early rise of Grindelwald. He never sought power, yet in a moment of desperation, the Elder Wand came into his hands." Harry frowned. "A knight of mastery." "Yes, a knight in which he used the wand not to conquer, but to shield others. The wand obeyed him with reluctance, recognizing him not as a master of ambition, but as a guardian. And when it passed from him the next day, he feared that the next wielder would not share his restraint." Hermione's voice softened. "So he crafted the enchantment as a safeguard." "Indeed," the stranger said. "He foresaw that in times of great unrest, the Elder Wand's legend would draw seekers, some noble, many not. So he imprinted a hidden spell within the wand's core, one that would activate only if its power were threatened by outside manipulation. When the wand passed from his hand, he shattered the physical form of his safeguard and concealed its fragments across Europe." Harry thought of the pedestal, the fortress, the fragment they carried. And now the enchantment has sensed a threat. "The Circle of Ash," the stranger said. "Descendants of those who once served Grindelwald. They believe the Elder Wand was never truly defeated, that its true power remains dormant until restored by unraveling Aaron's enchantment." Hermione frowned. "But the wand belongs to Harry, or rather, its power has faded." The stranger gave her a solemn look. "Power never fades on its own. It sleeps, and the circle intends to wake it." Silence followed, deep and heavy. Calder pushed himself upright. "Why me? Why am I part of this?" The stranger approached him slowly. "Because you have no desire for the wand, no hunger for dominance, and because the third master foresaw that only a wizard without ambition could survive the binding of his safeguard. You are the fulcrum upon which his enchantment now balances." Calder's voice trembled. "What happens if I complete it?" The stranger hesitated. Harry stepped forward. "Answer him." "If you complete the enchantment," the apprentice said softly, "the Elder Wand's hidden legacy will be revealed. A final truth the third master kept from all but those he trusted." "What truth?" Hermione asked. Before he could speak, a thunderous crack echoed through the fortress. All four turned sharply. The chamber torches flickered. A tremor rolled through the ground. Harry's wand rose. That wasn't natural. The stranger's gaze darkened. "No, the circle has reached the fortress." Hermione's eyes widened. "Already?" "They followed the same signs Calder did," the apprentice replied. "And they will stop at nothing to seize him." Another tremor struck. Stronger, closer. Dust rained from the ceiling. Harry moved into position. "We need to get Calder out. Now." The stranger raised a hand. "No. If he leaves before the sequence settles, the enchantment may turn volatile. You must protect him here until the next stage completes." Hermione's breath caught. "You mean the binding isn't finished?" "No," the stranger said. "It is only beginning." A jagged crack split open across the far wall. Through the darkness beyond, cold voices echoed. The Circle of Ash had entered the fortress. Harry stepped before Calder, wand blazing with fierce determination. "Then we stand and face them," he said. For tonight, the apprentice murmured, the fate of the Elder Wand stirs once more. The fortress groaned beneath the weight of approaching power, each tremor rolling through the ancient stone like the heartbeat of some slumbering titan stirred awake. Dust sifted from the ceiling in fine gray veils as Harry, Hermione, Calder, and the mysterious apprentice braced themselves within the circular chamber. Torches guttered wildly, their flames bending toward the shattered stairway where footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, and growing nearer. Harry's grip tightened around his wand. "They're coming through the lower halls," he murmured. "We hold them here." Hermione moved to Calder's side, studying the faded glow still flickering beneath his skin. "The enchantment is stirring again," she whispered. "If they reach him while he's this vulnerable, they will not," the apprentice said with quiet certainty. "But you must understand, the binding will seek completion when the threat grows greatest." Calder swallowed, dread tightening within him like cold rope. "And what does that mean for me?" "That depends," the apprentice said, "on what you choose when the moment arrives." Before Calder could press further, a thunderous crack split open the far wall. Stone shattered outward as cloaked figures surged through the breach. Half a dozen witches and wizards in the ash gray and black garb of the circle. Their movements were precise, practiced, each step driven by grim purpose. At their front strode the same pale-eyed leader who had confronted them in the mountain vault. His gaze swept the chamber, pausing upon Calder with something like triumph. "There you are," he said softly. "The conduit awakens, and the final key lies within reach." Harry stepped forward, wand leveled. "You will not touch him." The leader smiled faintly. "You have no idea what you stand in the way of." "Nor do we care," Hermione replied, her voice clear and hard as tempered steel. The circle moved as one. Spells erupted, blasts of crimson, gold, and shadowy violet. Harry leapt into action, his shield charm bursting into form with fierce brilliance. It flared beneath the onslaught, warping but holding. Hermione swept her wand in a wide arc, sending a cascade of shimmering force that scattered two attackers into a scramble of cloaks. The apprentice stepped forward then, his power rising like a cold wind brewing beneath the earth. He raised one hand, not a wand, and a barrier of pale blue energy unfurled before him, absorbing a torrent of hostile spells. His voice remained soft, but the words he spoke thrummed with ancient resonance. "Begone from this place!" The barrier surged outward, rippling through the chamber. 3 members of the circle staggered back, but their leader remained unmoved, eyes narrowing with interest. "Ah," he murmured. "So the old ghost breathes still." The apprentice's expression darkened. "I breathe, and I stand. That is enough." As the duel intensified, Calder pressed his back against the dais, struggling to remain upright. The enchantment pulsed inside him, each beat echoing with the growing danger. It tugged at his senses, urging him toward something unseen, guiding, calling. Hermione noticed his trembling and knelt beside him. "Calder, stay with me," she said. "Do not let the enchantment seize control." "I'm trying," he gasped, "but it's reacting to them, to all this, like it knows the battle is meant to happen." Hermione's heart tightened. Because it is. The third master crafted his safeguard to awaken in times of great threat. The circle's presence may be forcing the next stage. Calder clutched the edge of the dais, grimacing as sparks flickered through his veins. "I can feel something opening, something ancient." Before Hermione could respond, the circle's leader struck again. This time not at Harry, not at the apprentice, but directly at Calder. A lance of dark energy tore through the chamber. Harry saw it and shouted, "No!" He dove forward, wand raised, but the spell was too swift. It surged toward Calder, only to collide with the dais in an eruption of white fire. The shockwave flung everyone backward. The chamber rang with a thunderous hum as the runes carved into the dais ignited in a spiral of blinding light. The broken relic at its center rose into the air, surrounded by swirling fragments of ancient magic. Calder cried out, doubling over as the enchantment seized him with renewed force, lifting him from the ground. Light wrapped around him like glowing chains, pulling him toward the floating relic. Hermione reached for him, but the apprentice held her back. "No," he said sharply. "You cannot interfere now." The enchantment decides. Calder hovered above the dais, eyes wide with fear as ancient runes inscribed themselves upon the air around him, symbols of binding, awakening, and choice. The circle leader laughed softly. Yes. The sequence begins. The conduit aligns with the relic. Soon the Elder Wand will respond, and its true legacy will awaken. Harry flung a stunning spell at him, forcing the leader to leap aside. "Harry!" Hermione cried. "If the enchantment completes here—" "I know," he shouted. But what to do? To interfere risked harming Calder. To do nothing risked giving the circle what they wanted. The apprentice stepped forward, his voice steady despite the storm around them. "Calder Thane, hear me. The enchantment does not claim you unless you accept it. You must choose, now." The runes burned brighter. Calder's voice cracked. "Choose what? I don't understand." "Choose your purpose," the apprentice called. "The safeguard responds to will. If your heart seeks protection, it will follow that path. But if fear dominates, then others may seize the moment in your stead." The circle leader's eyes gleamed. "Let him fear. Let the enchantment falter. Then we shall claim it." Hermione's voice rose, fierce and unwavering. "Calder, listen to me. You are not alone in this. You have us, Harry, me, all who stand with you. Decide with courage. Choose what you believe should become of this magic." Calder's breath came in ragged gasps as the light enveloped him. The enchantment tightened. The room trembled. And then Calder reached deep within himself, past the fear, past the confusion, grasping the single truth he had carried since the moment this all began. "I choose." But he never finished his sentence. With a deafening blast, the chamber wall exploded inward. Stone shattered, torches extinguished, and a roaring wave of icy wind swept through the room. Silhouetted in the debris stood a new figure, cloaked, hooded, and emanating a force that chilled the very air. The circle leader's expression faltered. "You," he whispered. "Impossible." Harry staggered back, shielding his eyes from the swirling dust. "Who is that?" The apprentice's face went white. "That," he said in a hollow voice, "is the one the third master feared most." The hooded newcomer lifted a hand. Every rune in the chamber flared white. Calder screamed, and the enchantment surged into its next stage. The chamber disappeared into a whirlwind of blinding white light. Calder felt the world split open around him, as though the fortress were no longer stone and earth, but a vast, shifting sea of ancient magic. The screaming wind tore at his cloak, pulling him toward the hooded newcomer, whose presence radiated a force so cold and absolute that even the air seemed to recoil. Harry braced himself against the blast, shielding Hermione as fragments of shattered stone flew past. The circle of ash staggered backward, their confidence broken, their leader's expression twisting from triumph to dread. The apprentice stepped in front of Harry and Hermione with startling urgency. "Stay behind me," he commanded. "If that one has returned, None of you must face him unshielded." Hermione struggled to speak above the roaring wind. "Who is he? Tell us." The apprentice's voice was heavy, strained. He was once Aaron Morkant's closest ally, until ambition drove him down a darker path. The third master named him Caliban Reed, a wandmaker of great brilliance and greater hunger. The hooded figure, Caliban, took another step forward. His presence pressed upon the room like a shadow made solid. With a single motion of his hand, the white flames around Calder sharpened into a spiraling vortex, binding him with chains of unbroken light. Harry raised his wand, but the apprentice caught his arm. "Do not attack him, not yet. You would only feed him strength." Caliban's voice filled the chamber, resonant as a tolling bell. So the safeguard awakens at last, the fragments answer, the conduit rises. "And I have come to claim what should have been mine a century ago." Calder strained against the vortex, but the magic held fast. "I don't want this. I never asked for any of it." Caliban tilted his head, as though amused. "Desire is irrelevant. The enchantment chose you because it believed you harmless. A vessel, a hollow space through which its true power might be completed. But I will shape it to my will, as Aaron never dared." Harry shouted above the gale. "The Elder Wand is beyond your reach. Whatever power you seek, you will not have it." Caliban turned, not fully, not even acknowledging Harry as a threat, but with the faintest shift of his hood. "You speak of a relic you do not understand, child of prophecy. Aaron's enchantment holds the key to the wand's final truth. With it, mastery becomes absolute." The Circle of Ash's leader stepped forward, trembling between awe and fury. We seek the same legacy. You are no enemy to us. Let us assist you, and together." Caliban did not raise a wand. He merely breathed out a single word. The leader crumpled as though struck by an unseen hammer, thrown across the chamber like a broken doll. He lay unmoving against the far wall. The rest of the circle recoiled in terror. Caliban spoke coldly. "I do not share power." Hermione gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Harry stepped in front of her once more. Calder's voice cracked, strained by the pressure of the enchantment. "Why me? Why not take the magic yourself?" Caliban's answer came like a blade drawn from its sheath. "Because the enchantment demands a bearer untainted by ambition. It rejects those who seek power. Aran was a fool to make it so. But I will use you to unlock what he hid, and then the safeguard will be mine." Calder felt the vortex tighten, the runes around him shifting their glow from pale white to burning gold. Images flashed in his mind: a river, a fortress burning, a wand of ancient lineage held aloft under storm clouds. The enchantment pressed deeper, searching, testing, demanding. Hermione shouted, "Calder, fight him! You must anchor the magic to yourself. Don't let him twist it." Caliban moved his hand, and a wave of cold swept toward her. But Harry leapt between them, casting a shield charm that glowed brilliant silver. The impact shuddered through his entire body, nearly knocking him from his feet. Still, he held firm. Caliban's hood turned fully toward Harry now. "You surprise me," he murmured. "The wand chose you once. A boy of middling talent, lifted above his station by fate's indulgence." Harry's breath caught, yet he raised his wand higher. "I defeated those stronger than you, and I'll stand between you and Calder." Caliban stepped forward. The apprentice swept in front of Harry, arms outstretched, his voice ringing with forgotten authority. "Caliban, by the oath you swore to Aaron, stand down." The chamber fell still. For the first time, Caliban paused. Then slowly, very slowly, he drew back his hood. His face was sharp, lined with age yet unmarred by weakness. Pale eyes blazed like winter stars. In that moment, it was clear he had once been extraordinary, not merely in power, but in presence, intellect, and purpose. His voice softened, almost wistful. You were his final apprentice, his favored. You were meant to continue his work, not shackle it. The apprentice's expression twisted with grief. Because I loved him as a mentor, Caliban, and he trusted me to protect the world from your ambition. You misunderstand, Caliban replied. I do not seek destruction. I seek restoration. The Elder Wand has never belonged to one master. Its truth has yet to be spoken. He raised his hand. The runes burned brighter, swirling in rapid patterns around Calder. Calder felt the magic surge into a new shape, some threshold approaching, some ancient mechanism awakening. Hermione cried, Calder, hold on to yourself. Anchor your will to something real, your life, your purpose, anything. Calder reached deep within, grasping at memories. The crackling hearth in his childhood home, his father's steady hands showing him his first curse-breaking charm, the thrill of discovering forgotten runes, the warmth of quiet evenings spent among books and old maps. And then, Harry and Hermione fighting for him, refusing to leave his side. The enchantment responded. The golden light shifted, spiraling inward. Caliban's eyes narrowed. No, no, do not resist me. Harry shouted over the roar. Calder, whatever you choose for yourself. Calder felt the decision rising within him like a tide, not forced, not guided, but his alone. He opened his mouth to speak, but Caliban struck. The hooded sorcerer thrust both hands toward the dais, unleashing a torrent of ancient power. The chamber exploded with white fire. Hermione was thrown backward. Harry crashed against a pillar. The apprentice staggered, falling to one knee. And Calder vanished into the heart of the vortex. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, from within the storm, a single voice echoed, stronger than before. I choose my own path. The light collapsed inward like a star imploding. When it cleared, Calder was gone. But something stood in his place, a figure of pure luminous form, neither wand nor wizard, radiating the third master's ancient power. Caliban froze, breath stolen, eyes wide. No, he whispered. It cannot be. The figure lifted its gaze, and the fortress trembled, as though the world itself sensed a destiny rewritten. The chamber held its breath. Where Calder had stood a heartbeat before, a luminous figure now hovered above the cracked dais, shaped like a man, yet not bound by mortal form. Light flowed through it like rivers of living moonfire, shifting and bending as though the ancient enchantment itself breathed within those radiant contours. The runes carved into the stone blazed in answer, no longer chaotic, but aligned in a perfect, spiraling harmony. Hermione pushed herself upright, dust falling from her robes as she stared in speechless awe. Is that Calder? Harry rose beside her, chest heaving, eyes narrowed, not in fear, but fierce protection. He's in there somewhere. I know he is. Caliban Reed stood motionless, shock cracking the cold certainty that had shaped every word he had spoken. No bearer has ever taken the inner form, he whispered. Not even Aaron. He was meant only to channel the safeguard, not become its vessel. The apprentice of the third master, still kneeling from the force of the blast, lifted his gaze with trembling reverence. Calder has not been consumed, he murmured. He has merged with the enchantment of his own will. As if hearing his name, the radiant figure turned toward them. Light pulsed gently from its form, and a faint echo of Calder's voice drifted through the chamber. "I am here." Hermione's breath shivered. "Calder, can you hear us clearly? Do you know what's happening?" The figure's voice was calm, layered with the ancient cadence of the enchantment. "I chose no master, neither wand nor wizard. I chose myself. The safeguard has accepted my will, and in doing so, it has revealed its true shape." Harry stepped forward cautiously. "Calder, are you still in control?" "Yes," the luminous form answered, "but I stand at a crossroads. The enchantment shows me paths, the choices Aaron once feared, and Caliban would force me toward the darkest of them." The hooded sorcerer's expression hardened into cold fury. "You were meant to be the key, not the lock. You cannot hold the safeguard alone. You do not possess the will, the power, the vision." The light around Calder sharpened, forming angles and arcs like the facets of a rising star. "I need none of those. I am the bearer chosen not for strength, but for humility." Caliban's eyes burned. "You dare to speak to me of humility? You, a quarry finder, a breaker of minor wards, dare to deny the inheritance Aaron stole from me?" The apprentice rose fully now, planting himself between Harry, Hermione, and the luminous figure. "Caliban Reed, Aaron denied you nothing. You turned away from yourself long before the Elder Wand ever crossed his path." Caliban drew a long breath, and the torches flickered violently. "Enough." His cloak unfurled behind him like a shadow taking shape. The air crackled, spitting sparks of frost and flame. The circle of ash, those who still stood, backed away with wide eyes, sensing the storm building at their leader's command. Harry lifted his wand, resolve carving steel into his voice. "Hermione, we cannot let him reach Calder. Whatever Calder is now, Caliban must not control it." Hermione nodded. "We stand together. Always." Caliban raised both hands. Magic gathered at his fingertips, thick, swirling coils of ancient power, dense enough to crush stone. "Step aside," he commanded, "or be swept away." The apprentice's voice rang with a single, resounding word. "No." He thrust his palm forward, not with the raw force of wand work, but with the subtle mastery of someone who had lived a century guarding secrets older than any spellbook. A shimmering crest of blue light erupted from him, colliding with Caliban's rising storm. The clash shook the fortress. White fire tore through the floor. Black frost spread across the walls. Spiritual and mortal magics collided in a battle that made the very foundations quake. Harry braced his shield charm against the shock waves. Hermione reinforced it with a murmured incantation. The circle members, unprepared for such forces, were flung backward, their cloaks snapping like torn banners. Calder's luminous form hovered higher, the vortex of magic rising around him. Runes spiraled from the dais, orbiting him like protective constellations. Caliban snarled, his voice echoing like the roar of a winter storm. "You cannot hold me, old ghost. You never could. It is not I who holds you," the apprentice replied, straining beneath the force. "It is your own shadow." But even as he spoke, the balance shifted. Caliban's magic swelled, a tide of relentless, consuming power. Stone shattered beneath his feet. The apprentice staggered. Hermione cried out, "Harry! He's breaking through!" Harry lowered his shoulder behind the shield charm, pushing with every ounce of strength he had left. "Calder, if you can hear us, do something. The enchantment must have a way to stop him." The luminous figure turned toward them, its glow flickering like a lantern in a storm. "My power is not violence," Calder's voice echoed, "but insight." A single rune detached from the spiral, glowing gold, pulsing with ancient warmth. It drifted toward Caliban, who faltered as if recognizing a long-buried memory. His voice broke. "Aaron, not that symbol." The rune pulsed brighter. Hermione gasped. "It's a seal of denial. Ancient binding magic." Caliban staggered, raising his arms as though to shield himself. "No! Aaron refused to cast that upon me. He believed I could be redeemed." The apprentice's gaze softened with sorrow. "He hoped you would turn back, even to his final breath." The rune floated before Caliban, illuminating his face, twisted now not with rage, but with something far older: regret, despair, the ruin of ambition grown monstrous. "I will not be denied," he whispered fiercely. "Not again. Not by him. Not by a boy." He thrust his hand forward and shattered the rune. The luminous figure recoiled, light flickering wildly. Hermione screamed, "No!" Caliban seized the collapsing magic, twisting it into a new spell, one forged from fury and brilliance. The chamber shook as he prepared to strike at Calder with everything he possessed. Harry hurled himself forward. "You'll have to go through me." Caliban's eyes flashed. "Gladly." He unleashed the spell. The apprentice roared a counter. The fortress buckled. Stone rained from the ceiling, and through the chaos, Calder reached toward the shattered rune fragments, gathering them with the last threads of the enchantment still loyal to him. His voice rang out, not weak or echoing now, but clear and commanding. This power was not meant for dominion. It was meant for protection. The light around him flared, blinding, pure, absolute. The spell Caliban cast met it, and the fortress exploded into a storm of magic. Silence did not come at once. Before the stillness settled, there was the roar of magic collapsing, the scream of wind ripping through broken stone, the groan of ancient walls fighting to remain whole. Light spilled through the world like spilled stardust, threading itself into every crack of the fortress, before withdrawing again into a single blinding sphere where Calder hovered. Then, the brilliance receded. Dust drifted like slow-falling snow. Shattered pillars lay strewn across the chamber, carved runes flickering weakly upon their fractured surfaces. The air smelled of old enchantments burned to their limits. Hermione pushed herself upright, coughing as she swept rubble from her robes. "Harry, are you hurt?" Harry stood a few paces away, braced against what remained of a pillar, wand raised though his hand trembled. "I'm fine," he said, though his voice was hoarse. "Where's Calder?" Hermione looked toward the center of the room. There, amid the swirling dust, the luminous figure wavered. Its form dimmed, the radiance thinned almost to translucence. The runes that had circled him were extinguished now, like stars quenched from the sky. Only faint sparks clung to the air around him. The apprentice staggered toward the figure, leaning heavily on the broken dais. "Calder, can you hear us?" The light shifted, slowly coalescing until the outline of a man became clearer. Limbs took shape, then features. The glow softened, withdrawing into Calder's skin until at last he stood upon the dais once more, exhausted, pale, trembling, but wholly himself. Hermione gasped and hurried to him. "Calder, thank goodness." His knees buckled as she reached him, but she caught him, easing him onto the steps of the dais. "Steady," she murmured. "You've done more than anyone should ever be asked to do." Calder's eyes fluttered open. "Hermione, Harry, Save your strength," Harry said gently. "You're safe." But the calm was deceptive, because Caliban Reed still stood, not broken, not defeated. He had been thrown to the far side of the chamber, buried beneath rubble, but slowly, Terrifyingly, he rose from it, brushing dust from his cloak as though waking from a long and unpleasant dream. A thin line of blood cut across his cheek. His eyes burned with a cold, unbroken fury. "You insolent child," Caliban hissed, his voice shaking with restrained wrath. "You dared to wield Aaron's safeguard against me." Calder forced himself upright again, though Hermione held him fast. "I didn't wield it," he said quietly. "I understood it. Something you never tried to do." Caliban stepped forward, the stones beneath his boots blackening with frost. Power is not meant for understanding. Power is meant for mastery. "That," said the apprentice, rising to stand between Caliban and the others, was the belief that drove Aaron to bind his safeguard in the first place. Caliban laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Aaron was weak, bound by compassion, crippled by fear. He had the Elder Wand in his grasp and squandered its gift. You, his beloved apprentice, lacked the will to take up his mantle. But I... He raised a hand. The entire chamber trembled. Shards of stone rose from the ground like jagged spears. Hermione's breath caught. "He's drawing power from the fortress itself." Harry stepped in front of Calder and Hermione instinctively. "No matter how powerful he becomes, he's not getting past us." Caliban sneered. "You cannot stand against me. Not now. Not after the safeguard's release has weakened the wards surrounding this place. The fortress answers to me." Yet even as he spoke, the runes carved into the very walls flickered, not in assent, but in warning. They pulsed like fading embers, resisting him weakly. The apprentice lifted a broken piece of stone, its surface still etched with faded sigils. "No fortress bound by Aaron Morkant will ever serve your will, Caliban." "Then it will die with you," Caliban roared. He thrust his arms outward. The stone spears shot toward them. Harry swept his wand in a vast arc. "Protego Maxima." The shield erupted like a silver barrier of force. Spears shattered against it, raining debris across the chamber. But each impact weakened the shield, cracks spidering through its shimmering surface. Hermione added her strength, her incantation weaving into Harry's spell. The shield held, but only barely. Calder tried to stand. "I can help." Hermione gripped his arm. "You barely survived the last surge. Let Harry and the apprentice stand for now." But the apprentice shook his head. "No. Calder must rise. The safeguard still lingers within him. Even dimmed, it is the one force Caliban cannot bend." Calder staggered forward, his legs trembling beneath him. "What can I do?" "Refuse him," the apprentice said. "Refuse his claim. The enchantment listens to the bearer's will. It always has." Caliban snarled. "Do not listen to him. You are no bearer. You are nothing." Calder looked from the apprentice to Harry and Hermione, their faces etched with unwavering trust. Then he straightened, though his entire body shook. "I may not be a bearer," he murmured, "and I may not be chosen by destiny or legend, but I am myself, and that is enough." He raised one trembling hand. The sparks beneath his skin flared, weakly, but with unmistakable purpose. The runes in the walls responded. Caliban froze, mid-incantation. "No, no, you cannot deny me." The fortress trembled again, but now with a different voice, not Caliban's, not Harry's or Hermione's. The magic that filled its foundations shifted, aligning itself once more with the enchantment that Aaron Morkant had created long ago. A low hum grew through the chamber. Calder's spark spread outward, rekindling the runes. Caliban screamed, "Stop! You are not worthy!" Calder met his gaze, calm and resolute. "Perhaps not. but neither are you." The runes ignited. A wave of force surged through the chamber, pure, ancient, cleansing. Caliban staggered as the enchantment struck him, not killing, not destroying, casting out. His scream echoed as his body was flung back, hurled through the breach he had created earlier. The shadows swallowed him, his form vanishing into the distant corridors like smoke drawn into a void. The moment he disappeared, the fortress fell into exhausted stillness. The runes dimmed, the walls ceased trembling. The last sparks faded from Calder's skin. Harry dropped to one knee, breathing hard. Hermione collapsed beside him, tears of relief brightening her eyes. Calder fell backward, and the apprentice caught him gently. "It is finished," the apprentice whispered, but his expression was filled not with triumph, only with fear of what came next. For Caliban, Reed was defeated, but not destroyed. The fortress exhaled a long, weary groan, as though relieved to be rid of Caliban's presence, yet fearful of what his departure might herald. Dust drifted in slow spirals from the vaulted ceiling, settling over fractured pillars like fresh snowfall. The enchantments that had burst forth in brilliance only moments earlier now dwindled to faint, trembling echoes in the stone. Harry steadied himself against a broken wall, catching his breath as Hermione knelt beside Calder. The young cursebreaker lay weak and pale in the apprentice's arms, but the faint sparks that had once danced through his veins were now gone, snuffed out like the last embers of a dying fire. "Calder," Hermione whispered, brushing dust from his hair. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. "I'm here," he managed, "just tired, like every part of me has been drained." Harry approached, relief softening the tension that had gripped his features. "You stood against him, truly against him. Not many could have done that." Calder attempted a faint smile. "I didn't stand alone." The apprentice lowered him carefully to sit against the dais. "The safeguard has retreated," he said. "Your body would not have survived another surge, but you remained its master even as the magic faded." Hermione's brow knotted in worry. Has it gone entirely, or could it return? The apprentice hesitated. Harry's eyes narrowed. "Tell us the truth." "The safeguard will not return in its previous form," the apprentice replied. "But some trace of it remains within Calder, a quiet echo, no longer active yet not wholly dormant. It will not seize him again, but he may still sense lingering impressions, as one might sense fragments of a powerful memory." Hermione let out a shaky breath. "That's something, at least." But Harry looked toward the darkened corridor where Caliban had vanished. "What about him?" "The spell cast him out, but not far. He's alive." "Yes," the apprentice said gravely. "Alive, and now more dangerous than before. His pride has been wounded, his ambitions denied. Such wounds fester in men like him." "So he'll come back," Harry said. The apprentice nodded. "In time, he will rebuild his strength, and he will seek Calder again." Calder lowered his gaze. "He'll never stop, will he?" "No," the apprentice said gently. "Not until his ambition is quenched or destroyed." Hermione rose to her feet, brushing rubble from her robes. "We can't fight him here. The fortress is too unstable. And Calder needs rest." "We leave," Harry agreed. "Now." As he stepped toward the chamber's exit, the fortress shuddered again, this time with a low moan, like stone begging to sleep. Cracks raced along the walls, dust billowing. Hermione gasped. "It's collapsing." "The enchantment that sustained it has been exhausted," the apprentice said. "Aaron's magic held this place together for a century. Calder's struggle, Caliban's assault, and the safeguards awakening, the fortress can endure no more. Harry turned sharply. We need to move. He helped Calder to his feet, supporting his weight. Hermione lit her wand, guiding their path through the fractured hallways. The apprentice moved behind them, watchful, ensuring the fleeing circle members, or Caliban himself, did not return. They hurried through ruined corridors where frost still clung to the stones, and shattered sigils glowed faintly before fading. As they descended the last staircase toward the outer gate, the ceiling groaned above them. We're almost there, Hermione urged, breath fogging in the cold air. A beam fell behind them with a resounding crash, sealing off the path they had just crossed. Faster! Harry called. They burst into the courtyard just as a final quake rippled through the fortress. The tallest tower shuddered, leaned, and collapsed inward with a roar that echoed across the frozen cliffs. Harry swept his wand across the air. We're clear of the wards. The magic here is too weak to hold us any longer. Hold on to me. Calder grasped his arm, Hermione the other. The apprentice stepped near them, but not close enough to apparate. You're not coming? Hermione asked. The apprentice shook his head. My path lies elsewhere. Caliban will not rest. I must watch the shadows he stirs. When the time comes, you may need me again. Harry regarded him with a quiet respect. You've carried this burden alone for a long time. It was Aaron's wish, the apprentice replied. But now the burden belongs to more than one guardian. His gaze drifted to Calder. Calder swallowed. I don't know if I can be a guardian of anything. But you already are, the apprentice said. You chose a path without ambition, without hunger, and shaped the safeguard by your will alone. The third master would have trusted you. Calder lowered his eyes, humbled. Hermione stepped forward, hope warming her weary voice. Will we see you again? Yes, the apprentice said softly. In time, and when that day comes, may the world be ready. A long moment of silence stretched between them. Then the apprentice stepped back, turning toward the snow-covered cliffs. Harry felt the wards weaken completely. Hold tight, he said. He twisted, and the courtyard vanished. They landed upon a quiet field beneath a pale winter sky. Trees rustled gently in the wind, and the world seemed impossibly still after the chaos of the fortress. Calder sank to the ground, trembling from exhaustion. Hermione conjured a blanket and wrapped it around him before lowering herself beside him. Harry looked to the horizon. He'll return, he said softly. Caliban. He won't accept defeat. Hermione nodded, her expression grave. We'll prepare for him. Calder stared at the faint sparks still fading from his skin. I don't know what the enchantment left inside me, but I know this isn't over. Harry placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Maybe not, but you're not facing it alone. The wind stirred through the field, carrying with it the quiet whisper of distant things, unseen forces shifting, ancient stories awakening once more. For though the fortress had fallen and the safeguard had dimmed, the shadow of the third master's legacy still lingered. And in the depths of the ruined stronghold, far beyond the reach of daylight, a single ember of Caliban Reed's power flickered back to life. The wind moved gently across the winter field, whispering through the tall, frost-silvered grass as though reluctant to disturb the fragile calm that had settled over the three weary travelers. Harry kept watch upon the distant tree line, wand in hand, alert for any sign of pursuit. Every instinct told him danger had not truly passed, though the morning sky glowed clear and peaceful. Hermione tended to Calder, helping him sip warm water from a conjured flask. His trembling had eased, though the exhaustion etched across his face spoke of magic drawn far beyond mortal limits. "How do you feel now?" she asked quietly. Calder managed a faint breath. "Like my bones are filled with sand. Heavy, but lighter in the heart." He looked up at her, throat tightening. "Hermione, I meant what I said in the chamber. I didn't stand alone." She smiled gently. "None of us did." Harry approached then, eyes sharp, but softened by relief. "The wards around this field are old, but strong. We've a little time to gather ourselves. After that, we head back to the ministry. There's much to report." Calder's gaze dimmed. "The circle still hunts us, and Caliban, he won't rest until he reclaims what he believes is his." Harry nodded. "No, but we'll be ready for him." Hermione folded her cloak tighter around her shoulders, staring into the pale horizon. "We must understand what truly happened in that fortress. Calder became something no bearer ever had, a vessel of the safeguard's deepest magic. The enchantment responded to his will, not its own." Calder lowered his eyes. It didn't feel like mastery, more like acceptance. The magic was enormous, terrifying even, but it asked what I wanted instead of commanding me. Harry thought for a moment. "Caliban said the safeguard exists because Aaron feared ambition. Maybe that's why you survived it. You don't want power." A quiet silence fell. Hermione turned toward Harry. "We must search the ministry archives for Aaron Morcant's records, or whatever remains of them. Everything we witnessed suggests the Elder Wand's history is far more complicated than anyone believed." Harry breathed deeply. "The wand rests in Dumbledore's tomb. It should remain so. But if its legacy reaches beyond its physical form, I need to know." Hermione nodded. "We will know. We'll make sure of it." Calder's voice drifted weakly. "Do you think the wand felt any of this from where it lies?" Harry hesitated. "Hard to say. It has always been more than wood and core, a story woven through centuries. Some part of it might have stirred, yes." The field grew quieter. Snowflakes drifted lazily from a cloud forming in the east. Hermione cast a warming charm over them as Calder leaned against the small rise of earth behind him. After a long pause, Calder spoke again. "When the safeguard took shape, I saw something. Not clearly, a vision, perhaps. A wand made of elder wood, but not as it is now. It glowed with a light like moonfire, bright enough to illuminate a battlefield." Harry exchanged a look with Hermione. A memory of the Elder Wand in its prime? Hermione considered this. Or something deeper, a symbol of what Aaron hid. Calder nodded slowly, though pain flickered across his brow. "Before the light faded, I felt a message. No words, just certainty. The wand will choose again. Not for power, for resolution." Hermione knelt closer. "Resolution of what?" "I don't know," Calder whispered, "but the world hasn't seen the last of its legacy." Harry closed his eyes briefly. "Then we must ensure whatever comes next unfolds in safety, not in chaos." The wind stirred again. A faint tremor rippled through the earth, not from magic, but the distant tread of hooves. Harry straightened instantly, wand raised. Hermione pulled Calder to his feet. A figure on horseback approached from the far ridge, cloak billowing behind him. He rode with purpose yet without urgency, slowing as he neared the field. When he reached the boundary of the old wards, he stopped, dismounted, and lifted his hood. A familiar face. The apprentice. Hermione breathed out. "You returned." He offered a solemn nod. For a moment, the shadows within the fortress stirred again. "I wished to ensure you were safe." Harry stepped forward. "Did you find Caliban?" The apprentice's expression tightened. He vanished into the collapsed passages. His power shielded him. I could not follow without risking another collapse. Calder's shoulders slumped. Then he lives. Yes, the apprentice said softly, but weakened, and his pride wounded more deeply than his flesh. What will he do? Harry asked. What he has always done, the apprentice replied. Seek power where he can, undermine where he must, and return when the world least expects it. Hermione drew herself up. Then we prepare. Together. The apprentice regarded her with quiet admiration. You are strong in ways Aaron valued most. The world will need such strength. Calder swallowed. Is there anything left inside me that Caliban might reach for? The apprentice placed a hand over Calder's heart. Only the faintest echo. A reminder, not a chain. The safeguard no longer governs you, nor can it be awakened through force. Calder let out a trembling breath, relief softening him. Harry approached the apprentice. What will you do now? I will follow the lingering traces of Caliban's escape, he answered. He will not move openly for some time, but he will move. And before he rises again, I will find him. Hermione's eyes glistened with the weight of unspoken gratitude. If ever we can aid you, send word. The apprentice bowed his head lightly. And if ever the wand's legacy stirs anew, I trust you three will stand ready. Harry met his gaze. We will. The apprentice backed toward his horse. Farewell for now. May your path be lit by steadier stars than mine. He mounted and rode away, soon vanishing into the mist rolling across the ridge. Calder watched until the figure was gone. He carries more sorrow than he admits. Harry nodded. Guardians often do. Hermione placed a comforting hand on Calder's shoulder. Come, we return home. You need rest, and the ministry must be warned. Calder managed a tired smile. Home sounds wonderful. The three joined hands. Harry gave the field one last glance, the frost shimmering like scattered pieces of a broken spell. Then they vanished with a crack. The place grew quiet once more, save for the whisper of wind weaving through winter grass. But far away, deep beneath the collapsed ruins of the fortress, something stirred among the cold stones. A faint ripple of dark magic. A breath. A promise. For Caliban Reed, wounded yet unbroken, opened his eyes in the darkness, and he smiled.